run to the parking lot, grab his truck. He had a pickup truck. I drive into the soccer field, back up, and I get some of his friends to help me put him in the bed of the truck. Nobody's doing anything. And I asked one of the guys, can you please keep doing CPR? So I drive. I'm going in, wrong way in the streets, just going really fast towards the hospital. Thank goodness somebody knew where one was. And I finally show up, and at some point, you when they put the electrodes to check the heart rate, he made it alive to the hospital.
That is a clip from this interview with my friend Luis Fernando Mises, and we'll get into that in a moment. I asked myself, who would be the first person that I should interview for this podcast, for A Beautiful Thought? Well, I didn't have to pause for long. Of course, it had to be Luis. Now, it's kind of funny. A lot of people have this bias or this blind spot in their thinking. Happened to me. I remember when I met Luis, even after having known him for a few years, I thought, or I assumed, he was always like that. He was always like this positive, happy guy who took so much responsibility, took extra care with his family, and all of these wonderful aspects of his personality. Of course, it's not that simple. There's always a struggle that goes behind that. And I wanted to explore that with Luis, especially talking about the tragic death of his father and the experience moving from the Republic of Mexico to the United States and the problems that arose because of that, race conflicts and other things. Now, Luis is a man who began his career, you might say, scrubbing toilets at Starbucks, went on to be mentored by the president of Starbucks. So this is an accomplished man, a sweet man, a wonderful person, and a wonderful public speaker, and a person who can teach servant leadership. So Luis's goal in his work is to try to get managers to notice how they can serve their employees better, to help their employees be happy, give them the right conditions to get their jobs done right and even exceed expectations, which is pretty cool. Of course, you can check out Luis's website, emancipatedhuman.com. So if you need or you want some consultancy on how to improve your business, how to do those things for your employees, check that out, emancipatedhuman.com. My own plug, of course, I'm selling cognitive behavioral services. So I'm giving coaching sessions using cognitive behavioral techniques. So if you have a problem like anxiety or depression, or even perhaps some physical problem that might be the result of stress, then these cognitive behavioral techniques can help you with that. You check me out on beautifulpodcast.com, and you'll see up the top it says CBT sessions, and you can book a session with me for just $6, at least as of today. So check that out. One more thing quickly before we begin. If you want to send me a voice message, you can do it through Anchor, through the podcasting app on your phone, or through the website. So check that out. If you go to the podcast on Anchor, you can check out the link in the description to find that. And you can leave me a voice message, ask a question to be included in a future podcast, or send me an email, kurt@beautifulpodcast.com. So get into that and let's begin.
This is A Beautiful Thought.
I'm here with my good friend, Luis Fernando Mises. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. So I wanted to explore some of your past and try to find some of the lessons which will probably be very valuable to other people. So I wanted to talk about your journey moving from Mexico to the United States and what that was like. When did you move to the United States?
It was in the year 2000. I think it was around September.
So you must have been, what, like 13, 14 years old then?
Actually, I was 16 or 17. My dad died when I was 16, and I think like maybe a couple months later I turned 17, and then we moved to the States shortly after.
Okay. So what was life? You were living in Mexico City in an apartment, right?
Yes, a nice condo in Mexico City near Chapultepec, if anybody knows about that area.
Yep, I do. And so what was life like in Mexico City before your dad died?
And this is from a perspective of Luis in 2020. It was I came to learn that it was a really cool childhood, and the reason why I learned that is because, you know, being interacting with other people and talking about it, it seems like, you know, it was without many troubles, and it was my dad was an engineer. We had a good lifestyle. My mom didn't have to work, I guess, at least for money, because she did do a lot of work in the house and with us and all of that. I have two siblings. Both of them are older than me, 15 and 13 years older than me. So it seems like at some point I had two sets of parents growing up. So, you know, it was really a loving childhood, if you will.
What can you tell me about your father, like his character?
It's... This is a guy... I'm so sorry. This was a man that he grew up in a family of other 10 brothers, so they were rough, you know. Everybody knew how to cook and clean, but at the same time, everybody fought. So he actually played professional soccer for, I think it was 2 seasons back in 66 and 67. And then he got married and all of that. And he told me, you know, back then there was no money in soccer and I needed to support a family. So I just went for my engineering studies. And so he worked really hard, and him and my mom came from really humble upbringings. His dad died when he was fairly young. He got sick. They had a bakery, but then at 6 years old, he started working because my grandpa got sick. So this is a guy that put himself through college, starting working at 6 years old. I cannot even fathom that, you know. And super community-oriented family man. I think I only saw him drunk once when he turned 50, and we made like a huge party. So he was super supportive, you know. In like by trade, he was an engineer, like I was telling you, but he had some training, like chiropractic training, and all the not all, a lot of the neighbors, when they will get hurt, they will come to my dad. Can you please fix me? And, you know, he would pop them or do some kinesiology, put them back in place and whatever. And he never charged for any of that. So I grew up seeing that, you know, the man of the family was a successful person that had, you know, worked really hard, but even then he had time for community and family. And that was some of the really, I want to say positive teachings. Super loving guy. One of the things that I liked a lot, I was always fascinated. He was like a walking encyclopedia, you know. He would know, like, I remember him explaining inflation to me when I was like 10 years old. And I heard that word and I was like, so what is that? And he was explaining it to me in child-friendly terms. And I was like, oh, wow, interesting. But, when you're 10, you don't give a darn about it. You just go on about your life. But now you know about inflation. So one thing that I find really interesting is that he was a servant leader. And I only learned that, 10 years ago. I'm a leadership development consultant, and we teach a leadership style where it's not just about the maximization of profit, but about people too. You put those two things in the same importance. You got to make money. It's a business, but at the same time, you have to take care of your people. And this guy, he displayed that. Like at some point, he would call his employees, his children, like his kids, and not in a demeaning term or anything, but he just cared so much about them. I remember, the business cycle goes up and down, and there was a period of time where there was no business. It was pretty tough, and there was no money to be made for his enterprise for about 6 or 8 months, and he never paid himself throughout that time, but he always kept payroll paid for his employees. And I always think about that, because I was used to a lifestyle that I just asked for it and suddenly things appeared. And it was kind of interesting to see, like at that age, my selfish, preteen years, I didn't understand. I was like, why do they get money and I don't? I'm the son,
Right.
But I think that's a really valuable lesson that, we were not without because, we were taken care of, but we just didn't have those extras that I was used to. And like I tell you, at first I didn't quite grasp that until later. And now I appreciate it because I think that's something, really valuable that I like to share with people.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. I remember the first time I interviewed you, I asked you about your healing and whether it was a sort of family tradition. And you mentioned things about your mother's side, I think, but you never mentioned that your father was a chiropractor and a healer. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, on my mom's side, she's more of an energetic healer. It sounds kind of weird, but she gets like visions and forecasting the future and things like that. Whereas my dad is a really earthy person. He was the goalie of the Toluca soccer team, like really earthy person. Because the goalie's always throwing himself. They call him the frog because he could jump like so high. Dude was maybe I'm 5'9" and he was probably 5'5", and when he jumped, he could like touch the goal, the top part of the goal with his stomach.
Oh, whoa.
I am 5'9". I cannot do that, bro.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's incredible. So yeah, this guy would help people in that fashion. Yeah, and it's something that, the concept of karma, I don't know if people believe in that or not, but I think that you can accrue enough good karma that you can actually pass it on to your kids, because to this day, still 20 years later, whenever I go to Mexico and some of his friends see me, they just like, because of my dad's memory, they treat me differently.
Wow.
They have high regard for him, and they would still do a lot of things for me because of that. So I think, my parents told me also, like, life's a boomerang. Whatever you throw out comes back at you manifold. And I keep seeing that happening to me. Even things that, I may not necessarily deserve just because I happen to be the son of engineer Duran,
Yes. And tell me about your mother. What was your mother like back then? I mean, your mother's still alive, right?
Yes. She grew up being the ugly duckling of the house. And it's not because she was not pretty, just, like the story tells. In fact, she had such an amazing voice that, let me preface that. They got her out of school and they put her to work, I think, age 16 or 15, I think it was. And she was working at at a clothing store comparable to like JCPenney's, maybe a little bit nicer, maybe Macy's, but in Mexico City. It's called El Palacio de Hierro. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
And she got taken out, and it was kind of rough because the story she tells me, kind of made me a little sad. Like, she said that they would take her envelope, like her parents, get the money out and just give her enough money for her transportation for the following week. So she, kind of like my dad, also supported her family financially because they had a bunch of kids. So both parents grew up with that idea of service. She's at this point, one of my aunts claims that she became a successful doctor because of my mom. Like they would use some of that money that my mom made to pay for her schooling and send her through university to be able to become a physician. And everything comes back at you. Like I was telling you, when she became really successful physician, then her house was everybody's house. It's like she would always have us over and hang out and just be friendly and familial. Whenever my parents got together, my mom stopped working so she could focus on the household, and I just saw that it was a really balanced polarity. I guess that's the right word. And they both have like this dance leadership of sorts, because one would lead and the other one would follow, and then the other one would lead and the other one would follow. It was not just a one person kind of thing. I mean, to the point that my mom didn't know how to cook. And my dad taught her. So it's, we didn't have that like huge, super strict gender roles in the house, because my dad had to teach my mom how to cook and how to wash clothes and all of that stuff. My mom knew how to work and do a lot of those things, but as far as like, some of the upkeep of the house, she didn't know. So that was, another interesting, unorthodox situation. But she was a quite excellent and present mother. She's tiny. She's like 5 feet tall. And, but she becomes a lioness whenever like any of her kids were in trouble. And, looking back, seeing her, I'm like, you're so tiny. How did you do those things? And she was, like I was saying, super involved, and to the point she was the coordinator of the parent-teacher association when my siblings were growing up. When I was growing up, she was always there, helping, doing all sorts of things to contribute to the schools where we were. And I mean, she would get up before anybody else and help us with breakfast. We didn't eat really heavy breakfast growing up. She would make us smoothies, like fruit smoothies with, whatever other things. But she would have that ready. And I try to do that for my kids. I wake up and I make them something light so they can start digestion going, and then we can keep going. I think the idea of, you start loving people differently when you feed them. And there's one thing that I really appreciate. Like, I never knew how much my parents loved me until I had kids.
Right.
Once I had kids, I was like, holy heck! Like, I mean, I would do anything for these guys, and it's incredible. So yeah, my parents were, they taught me and my siblings, unity. And like my mom would tell us by heart stories from like Aesop fables, and with the whole idea of, storytelling as a part of learning life skills or situations or whatever. And the funny thing about it is that she never really claimed those things by her, like for her, like, like as if those teachings came from her. oftentimes she would say, my mom always said XYZ, or, you know, Aesop's fable and this and that. Like, and now, you know, after doing like a lot of, you know, shadow work and inner journey stuff, I catch myself sometimes doing that thing, and I could claim, you know, to my kids, you know, just giving them the skills, but I like to also attribute a lot of those things to where they come from. So I also say, you know, my mom says this and this and this, and just to honor all the work and where it comes from.
Yeah. So your mom was definitely good at creating an ambience of a home. That's what you've said to me in the past.
Yes, there is a difference between, you know, doing things in the house and being a homemaker. You can be super efficient. You can be the best cook. You can be the best cleaning person. But making a home takes a different set of skills that, in my opinion, are more important than your efficiency at cleaning, you know, where you can create community. And even if you're not really good at cooking, like she isn't, you know, and she claims this too, so I'm not putting her down. She would bring people together and it's like, hey, why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? And play music and you know, crack a joke and just be really community oriented, where people felt seen and felt empowered and they felt like they wanted to help. It's vastly different than, you know, in other peoples that I've seen, where they are like really, really goal oriented to the point that they alienate people, and they're like, I don't want to help because, you know, if I make a mistake or if I do something or whatever, I'm gonna get chastised, so I just go away. And I think the idea of the transparency of your own ineptitude oftentimes allows people also the transparency of like, yeah, I'm not perfect, but you're asking me to help, so we're gonna be imperfect together and we're gonna do better than if, you know, there was a big weight on my shoulders. Yes.
So let's move on a little. So what were things like when your dad died? How did the family dynamic change? And what was the mood?
Well, I mean, just the mere fact that when he died, it was a huge shock for my mom. He was actually like 55 years old, so he wasn't too old. He was fairly young. And when it happened in halftime during one of his soccer games. There was a Masters League for retired soccer players. Or like you know, my dad would play with the same guy that scored the first goal in Azteca Stadium. You know, all the like old players will be there, and he kind of collapsed, and I thought that he was just resting, because a lot of them just kind of like lay down on the grass to rest from a hard game and whatever. And then my mom picked up on it. She's like, "No, there's something wrong." And then I felt immense trepidation, and I felt something weird in my skin, and I just ran towards him, and I noticed that like he was not right, like, you know, you could, the signs on his face, whatever. So something told me that it was a heart attack. I don't know, I cannot, to this point I don't know how I know. So I started doing CPR to the best of my ability, and this is like one of the weirdest things that pissed me off the most. Like, everybody froze but me. And wow. I was hoping that some other people will like get their act together, because I'm thinking that if other people were prepared and if other people were doing something, you know, he would still be alive. So
I guess in those days they didn't have like paramedics waiting on the side or something like that, or maybe wasn't such a big game to have that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this was just like a Sunday afternoon game where we would go to like Texcoco, like, you know, an hour away from the city, because it was cheap and far away from, you know, anybody that would take pictures. So it's a remote area. So I go and I run to the parking lot, grab his truck. He had a pickup truck. I drive into the soccer field, back up, and I get some of his friends to help me put him in the bed of the truck. And nobody's doing anything. And I'm like, I asked one of the guys, can you please keep doing CPR? So I drive. I'm going in, wrong way in the streets, just going really fast towards the hospital. Thank goodness somebody knew where one was. And I finally show up, and at some point, you when they put the electrodes to check the heart rate, he made it alive to the hospital. And at some point I hear the constant beep, and then I was like, oh shit, it happened. So at that point, your entire reality just shatters, and it's really like the Twilight Zone. You and I think Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this. When you get to a point when you don't know where you are because of something really big happening, like your everyday life stops being real. You don't know where you're at, and then you have to reconfigure, recalibrate, relearn things. And he's not kidding when he says that. Like, I mean, that happened. So the story happened, and you mentioned what happened afterwards. So, to this day, it affected us a lot, especially because he was such a pillar in the community and even in the family, not just like my personal, family, but the extended family. The uncle that everybody always wants to play with, or he would always help all the family members, this and that, give them counsel. Because of his experience, he could talk to a lot of people about a lot of things. So that left a big gap in the fabric of reality in our immediate community. So, I mean, this was a guy that he was invited to count the votes locally, because like everybody trusted him when there was like election day and stuff like that. So it was like, an asset to the community. So whenever that happened, my mom said, I want to leave Mexico. My parents traveled a lot. And she said, I don't want to be in any place where I have memories of your dad. So the, closest place that was far enough was United States. And although we have visited United States, it's been only, like just Christmas to see relatives here or whatever. So my brother was already living here, and he said, yeah, you guys should come here with me. I was finishing 11th grade, and I was about to start 12th grade. And the nun, because I went to a Catholic school, the nun said, you don't have to pay tuition for 12th grade. You can stay here and just finish. So I was like, holy heck, that's a pretty big thing.
Yes.
And my mom's like, yeah, I know. I got to bring you with me, dude. So ended up that she was bribing me. She said, I'll buy you the car you want.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, fine, dang it. So we moved here. I didn't get exactly the car I wanted, but I got something, so it's okay. And it's challenging. I mean, not just like, one of my friends told me when I moved 4 years ago from one house to the other, he said, moving is one of the most stressful things you'll ever do. And he was not kidding. Like, that stuff is hard. But now imagine being 17 on your last high school year, going from a preppy kid that, went to the same school as Placido Domingo to having to live in a trailer park in a different country, in a different culture, different country. Nobody knows you.
Wait, who is Placido Domingo? I didn't get that reference.
Placido Domingo is one of the most popular opera singers in the world. And, he played with
right.
Luciano Pavarotti and, that kind of caliber person. Yeah. Like the school I went to, the actors and actresses and heads of state would take their kids to that school.
Wow.
So it was kind of interesting growing up there. You know, being friends with the kids of actresses that my mom would watch in soap operas. So yeah, like being here was pretty rough. I guess it's kind of obvious, but you know, hit rock bottom pretty dark. It was like all the things at once: his death, moving, like becoming poor, and yeah, I mean, we came to the States with legally. We came with our visa and all of that, but we overstayed. So at some point, you know, you have the weight in your shoulders of not being fully legal. So that kind of adds to it.
So it's like you moved as tourists, or it was like a temporary residence visa or something? How did it work?
Well, we came here just as visitors. But one of the interesting things about it is because of my dad's work, we had what I think it was like B1-B2 something else e-visa, to where it's also investor's visa. So we like had a little bit like the stay was extended, and it was not just your normal visitor's visa. So that part was helpful, but still, you know, it ended and you know, we stayed here because that was the plan all along. So but you know, what do? You're here. And I started working too, and my mom said, you know, I'll give you a little bit of money every week. Oh, my dad's business partner, that slimy guy, he made sure that he was able to take as much as he could take legally from the partnership. So, you know, there's when you have like a business, you can put your cars and like assets under company's name, so it's less taxes taken. So, well, this guy, like, I mean, he kept our cars, and he almost wanted to even keep my mom's house, like the condo. And even her pension, he was fighting to keep her pension. I don't know how he was, like, thank goodness he couldn't, right? But yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I'm like, yeah, Mom, I cannot take your money. Like, you know, like this dude took everything. So as I was going to school, you know, I made friends, and one of them invited me. He said, you know, they're opening a barbecue restaurant, and they're asking for just entry level people. And I'm like, oh, hook me up, I'll go. So I started. Oh, but before this, actually, one of my cousins had a couple of cleaning contracts, so I started cleaning Barnes and Nobles / Starbucks's. And that was like a weekend thing, you know, Sunday morning. Like I had to be there at 7 a.m. because that's when the week started for them or something. And so I mean, I was basically scrubbing toilets at age 17. And one of the things that my parents taught me is like, yeah, I mean, you know, life's like a Ferris wheel. Sometimes you're on top, sometimes you're on the bottom. Nothing ever lasts. So I didn't have the idea that I was just scrubbing toilets was not like I was too good for it. I'm like, heck, it's money. So, and the opportunity is here, and I'll do the best that I can. You know, growing up, I always heard my mom say, I don't care what the heck you do as long as you're the best. Even if you're the guy sweeping the street, you have to be the best. Even if you're a CEO, you have to be the best. So that's the mentality that I had, and you know,
it's like the Toltec agreements.
Yeah, be impeccable. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride.
Yes. So what was the hardest part about moving?
Leaving the life that I knew. that I had.
Right.
That's been the hardest. I mean, at school, I played varsity basketball. I ran track. I had a little girlfriend and I had a bunch of friends, and it's something that it just jolted me out of existence. And now, at age 36, 2 weeks I'll be 37. It's been 20 years that I've been here. I see that in all of those things as, you can suffer and you can be nihilist about it, or you can find meaning, or you can find the lessons, or you can find something that will help you grow. So we're using all that shit as compost. One of the things that I remember, this is back in, early 2000s, actually probably 2000, 2001. One of my cousins, him and I were chatting on, I don't know if you remember ICU, the messaging app from early 2000s.
ICQ?
Yeah. Him and I were chatting, and he said, when are you going to stop feeling sorry for yourself? And that, I still remember that 20 years later. It's something that really kind of like if he had grabbed me by the shoulders to shake me awake through Messenger. And I took that as, I was telling him, suffering, all this and that. And while he was listening, while he was paying attention to what I was saying, he could hear the undertone that I was making things harder than they should be by becoming a victim. And when he said that, I had a little bit of an awakening then. And then I started changing my perspective, and I was like, yeah, that's right. I was, I had a level of proficiency and mental acumen and all of these things. Like, why am I wasting that? He's right. So sometimes a level of tough love from somebody that really cares about you with the right words and actually, the right tone, because you're not going to try to roast people, but just,
yes,
somebody that lovingly tells you, snap the heck up, is...
What do you think it was in you that changed in that moment when he said that?
I did not want to be somebody that just felt sorry for myself and made a life of whining. I was like, wait a minute, who is this that I'm becoming? Even though my parents, were the way I was explaining to you, they also had really high standards. They were like, you're going, like my mother would have me repeat this mantra before school every day. She would say in Spanish, yo no vengo a ver si puedo, sino porque puedo vengo, which means I am not here to see if I can. I am here because I can. Like, she made me repeat that stuff every day, every morning. So it seems like all of that kind of came together, and the way I see it, everything is programming. Everything in your mind is programming. So if you're not consciously programming your mind, then somebody else is. So becoming aware of that programming is super important.
Yes,
it's programming nonetheless, so might as well choose what programming you have. So I became aware of that I did not want to be, and I was not becoming my best self. I was not actualizing and embodying the DNA of my parents, just the simple fact that we're alive is big enough. But, seeing my parents, when they first got married, they were so poor. They were eating sardine tacos at their honeymoon, and from that to where we were, I was like, heck yeah, they could do it, I can too. So, like the Spartans, so that's something that has been helpful. And I was like, yeah, this is not me. Snap out, dude. And I've been thankful, for 20 years to that guy.
Yeah. So it's like you did have that strong sense of identity, but for some months or something, you would strayed from that, and it just took your friend with the right words and the right moment to snap you back a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that was super helpful. And I mean, I started drinking. At some point, I kept a pitcher in the refrigerator with vodka and pink lemonade. A pitcher.
Okay, like a gallon jug or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, thinking back, I'm like, holy heck, that was a crazy time. But, you know, the way I see it, like, I mean, we're all addicted to something. Like, we all need those dopamine hits or serotonin hits. So we either get them by being purposeful and intentional in our life, or we get them by, you know, victim mentality or anger, or some people do it with drugs, you know? So again, like the programming situation, like you have to be conscious about how you're dealing with the chemistry in your brain.
Yes. So one thing, I from the outside the United States, it always seems like people within the US are hyper-focused on race. What was your experience of that?
That's actually a great question. In Mexico, I was Luis. And when I moved to the States, I was a Hispanic male. And I mean, I didn't know that's what I was when I was in Mexico. You know, it's like, I mean, obviously, you know, but it's not something that you think about. I mean, I think there's like a balance, right? Whenever I was in Mexico, versus here, like here at the school when I went to, even though it was a nice school, you know, a nice high school, it was divided during, like, if you step back towards the entrance at lunchtime, you could see the division of colors, you know, like there's a table, like there's white people, this other table was black people, and this other table like Asians, this other table the Hispanics, and then the other one were like little punk kids, you know, that wore spiky hair and stuff like that. So it was so interesting how it's not about individuals, you know, there's a lot of race influenced conversation, communication, interaction. So, I mean, it was kind of weird at first, but it just seems like it occupies so much time and mental space that it's probably not even necessary, you know? Like, when you're talking about somebody, you're like, yeah, this white kid or this black guy or this Mexican dude, like, okay, to me, it's just a dude, you know, and I'm not like saying that we need to be like race blind or anything like that. I think that instead of becoming a melting pot, it's a good idea to be like a nice garden salad where everybody is still themselves and different, but every bite that you take, you're able to feel a different flavor. You know, and that's like actually celebrated instead of, you know, you're just dividing your rice and your peas, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. So when do you think, I mean, eventually you became an entrepreneur and all these things. When do you think you kind of got over the fact that you were in the US, or when do you think you had some kind of success at actually being in the US?
I'm not sure that I have experienced that yet. I still, it's I don't know if it's because all the things, you know, the dying of my dad and moving and all that, like it seems like even when I go back to Mexico, I don't fit in as much anymore. It's kind of interesting. Like, I know lifestyle and I can move, you know, like I'm a cosmopolitan. I like to say that. But I guess if I am understanding your question properly, is like when was it not hard anymore to live here? Is that like when I was getting my groove into it, or is that kind of where you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. At some point, I just kind of gave up on that victimhood, I suppose. And I guess I was pretty close to... I think, now that I'm thinking about it, there are like two levels. When I was in Dickie's Barbecue, and I mean, I was 18 and I was already an assistant manager. Like in 2 years, I was able to move up the ranks, and that, like, you know, when you're able to play the game, you know the rules and you play them well and you win, you know, that gives you a level of a certain amount of stability, and you can move forward. But then the more that I was able to find my own identity, the easier it became to deal with others. The more I learned about myself, the more I could deal with other people and help them. The more I could self-awareness and affect labeling and all of those things have been of paramount importance to be able to feel more at ease. And I mean, like, gosh, I still, like, you know, I was telling you, I haven't reached that point that is just like easy, because I think, I don't know if many people would agree, but like, life is hard. So I just try to do my best, and I feel like I mean, I'm not necessarily a religious person, but I really feel this passage of the Bible, like, I am in the world, but not of it.
Yes.
Like, I can feel really comfortable being here. I can make myself home, but I'm not from here. And here meaning United States or Mexico or whatever. It's like, it feels interestingly weird.
Yeah, actually, I've been thinking about that recently. But before I address that, I'll just ask you about that term, affect labeling, or affect labeling. That's like when you have an emotion and you try to put a label on it so you can better understand it or better pin it down. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The more that I could understand my own feelings, my own emotions, and I could clearly speak about them, then the more I could also understand other people and help them do the same. And that creates a level of community also, because, you know, you're creating meaning together. So I think that's super valuable.
Yeah, what you were saying about your place in the world, or not not being of this world. I was thinking about, well, you know, I'm learning some Sanskrit. I was looking at the etymology of the word dukkha, and it's kind of interesting. Apparently, the Hindus, when they moved to the river in India, they were this culture that was very based around wheels and wagons and chariots and things. So, of course, the metaphors in their speech were a lot about that. And so when you have these words, dukkha, which is like, it's normally translated as suffering, what it literally means, apparently, is when you have an axle that's not completely aligned. And so it's like the wheels are moving in this jagged fashion, you know? And I'm like, well, that's such a great metaphor for what life feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I can see what you're saying. I just quick pause. I have the electrician here.
Okay,
can I
go ahead.
Pause real quick?
Yep.
Okay, give me 1 second.
So I guess the things you learned through all these experiences, one was about not feeling sorry for yourself, or being able to pull yourself out of that victim mentality. And the other thing you learned is sort of being comfortable with the discomfort of being, something like that. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's I'm able to, I guess, relate quite a bit to some of the Buddha teachings, like life is suffering, rule number one kind of thing. And I don't think that the goal in life is happiness. There's something that I think the founding fathers of the United States had a really advantageous point of view. Like, they said that you had the freedom to pursue your happiness. They didn't say you have the right to happiness. You have the right to pursue it, because I don't think it's a destination. I think it's a byproduct of you living a purposeful life. So, the idea of, there's a lot of times when we feel like the romantic idea that as long as we have certain things in life, we will be happy. Once we have certain job, once we have certain amount of money, we will be happy. And that's not how it works in my experience. And in another, because of the work that I've had, I've been able to connect with a lot of people in really high positions of power or influence. And, it seems like they all agree, having everything that you dreamt about never really solves the problem, because that's an internal thing that comes from within. So the outside, there's a reason why life is suffering, because otherwise, we wouldn't have the idea or proclivity or priority to change. Like, if you're comfortable and happy, you will never change, and life is nothing but change, and it pushes us. So I think, the way I view it is, you will suffer unless you're conscious and aware enough to see where you need to adjust and change. And because most of us are not that aware, we go through suffering. So it's I guess a bit deeper than what we were explaining a second ago, but that's the end result of my experiment.
Okay. All right. Well, I do remember asking that question. I was in Wat Tam Kravok, and the monks were teaching us some Dharma, and I asked, well, what happens when we do reach this enlightenment, or we reach a certain stage in our development where we are indifferent to suffering or something like that, or we can just feel happy all the time if we want to, because we have that sort of control over our bodies. And my monk friend said something like, well, it's a question of motivations. Your motivations can change. Just because you receive no emotional payoff from doing things, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't do them. It won't be because you're trying to pursue happiness. It will be because you're trying to pursue something perhaps even greater.
I love that. That's so profound. And, just to think that there is something more profound than happiness is also something to think about. The romantic ideas that they sell us in Hollywood is, the right couple, the right house, the right job. But that's not necessarily it. It's all internal. There's people that are happy with way less than what we have.
Yes.
And so it's certainly not about a certain achievement in the physical arena.
Yes. So you think that's definitely an important message, don't expect happiness to come from external things.
Absolutely. That's, I guess, at least in my experience, I could be proven wrong, but I have tried that whole, making enough money, having certain thing, having certain position, whatever. But, what happens when you're really hot and you're so sweaty, and then you're like, I just want some water and maybe some ice cream. And then you finish your ice cream and you're happy for, 20 minutes, and then it goes away. Like, the nature of the physical reality is that nothing ever lasts. So, if we're basing our happiness on something that's from the physical world, it will always be married to its impermanence, and therefore it will not last.
Yes. Okay, here's something we can try. So say somebody out there, say somebody maybe 17 years old is out there and they feel themselves slipping into a victim mentality, or maybe they identify with something you said, and they realize that they have that thought pattern. What's something you would say to them to help guide them out of it?
That's such a challenging one, because
yes.
I personally would always vouch for sort yourself out, like learn about yourself, grow yourself. I'm not saying that you should never be happy with where you're at, because if you're content, that's not a bad thing. But if you are not scaring yourself, you're not growing. So there is something about the 17-year-olds, up to 20, and, they get out of high school and then they get out of college and they're like, I got to play safe so I can retire. I think that from 20 to 30 is when you're supposed to be the high risk person, creating and acting and trying all sorts of things, because you can't afford to lose at that time. Versus when you're 50 or 60 and then, you're betting the farm and then you don't have as much time to recuperate if you lose. So traveling, reading, learning, and experimenting, I think that's pretty important. What do you think?
Yeah, well, as you said, it's a difficult question. It's hard to really say anything that's going to make somebody take responsibility for their own life. But of course, it's the only way that somebody can find happiness, I think, is to take responsibility for their own life and for their own happiness. So if they feel like, the world is just happening to me, I guess one vital question would be, what can I do? What is within my power? Because when you start exercising that small amount of power that you have, you quickly find it expanding.
Absolutely. And there is, I've had a lot of people that, I'm really vocal about and transparent about the vicissitudes that I've gone through and overcoming them and all of that. And a lot of people that tend to be in that victim mindset, they get really angry at me. And they say, Luis, not everybody had the childhood that you did.
Yes.
Not everybody had the opportunities that you did. You were able to bounce back because you had the foundation that you did.
Yeah, and which is partly true. There's truth to that.
I think it's absolutely true, but it's not complete.
Yes.
Because just thinking about the idea that my dad had to start working at age 6, dude. I, at 6 years old, probably couldn't even wipe my own butt 100% right.
Yeah.
And this dude was already working.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing.
That just bakes my noodle, and not just that, but he was like a little courier,
wow.
He was taking public transportation and the train and going to another city to deliver stuff at age 6. I, at this point, without my iPhone, get lost going to downtown. It's that ridiculous. This dude was so I one of the most important things, I guess, to focus that is, life is hard and you have enough justification to be pissed and to be angry and to do drugs, into like, I mean, I'm not surprised that people do that. I'm more surprised that people don't do that, because life is hard.
Yes.
And so the way I view it is like, what else do you have to lose? What else do you have going on? I mean, that's basically all there is to do. So if we're saying you're going to suffer either way, but with the things that you and I are covering today, we could find some meaning that changes the neurochemistry of our bodies to the point that we could feel a sense of purpose, which, the sense of purpose and being in flow is like, it's a neurophysiological message from the universe telling you that you're in the right place at the right time. I mean, imagine feeling the feeling of drugs, but without drugs, because you're loving your work so much. And there is something to be said about that, because like a lot of people are like, oh shit, it's Monday, I hate Mondays. Oh yay, it's Friday, I love Fridays. Like, no, you don't hate Mondays, you hate your life. Like, you need to do something that you enjoy. Like, I mean, I know work is hard, but it's how you view it. Like, instead of saying, oh, I gotta go flip burgers at McDonald's, like, that's not a bad thing. Like, every action that you take either helps you to your end goal or detracts you from it. So even if it's like brushing your teeth, you're brushing your teeth with the purpose of your main goal, So if we keep that in mind, if we keep that perspective, then you don't need to be like reminded, or you don't need, what's the word that I'm seeking? You don't need to be inspired by something, because you already have that fire burning inside you. Like, when I was going through like big depression, it was really hard to wake up, to go to sleep, to stay asleep, to do anything, because like, what's the point? But whenever I was able to reach more of a purposeful lifestyle, like, I wake up and I know that my actions will create something for the betterment of, like, so I think one of like the most important things is, are you, like, your developmental stage, are the things that you're focusing on just for you or for somebody else? One of the things that a lot of the spiritual teachers say, if you're struggling, go help somebody else.
Yes.
So if your developmental stage, you can be me, or you can be us, or you can be all of us. Those are the three developmental stages. And until we get to, more of the all of us, then we can see that how our actions are actually connected to, like, they affect other people. Even if we're not doing anything, that affects other people, because now they have to do stuff that you're not doing,
Yes. Yes. Well, I like what you said about like brushing your teeth with purpose. I do think about that a lot, actually, or not. Well, more or less that, like with the Toltec agreements, like with to do everything as if it's important, like even the smallest thing, because sometimes, well, part of it is sometimes small things become big things, and I think there's a lot of happiness to be found there. Like, even when you're washing the dishes and washing them with purpose and with mindfulness, it feels good. And that's the kind of consciousness that can get into every part of your life if you practice that.
Yes, I like that. And my tantric teacher taught me something that's pretty cool. She said, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And, I tell my son, little 11-year-old, I'm like, your work talks for you. So when you're washing your dishes, if you do a sloppy job, then, that means that you're not present and that you're sloppy. If you don't make your bed right, that means that, you're... So all of those actions are representations of you. At the highest level of psychological integration there is no difference between you and what you experience. So what that means is your room is you, your car is you. You know, if your car is messy, if your room is messy, that signifies that there are cobwebs in your psyche that you haven't looked at in a long time. And then that's going to bring troubles later. You know, there's some constipation happening there. So that's another cool thing that, you know, a lot of people want to go to heaven when they die. But I think that you can bring heaven on earth through intentionality of your actions as you are making. I mean, it's not about making things perfect, because that's even, you know, laughable, but about making things with excellence. And yeah, you will make mistakes. And I think when it was Beethoven, he said something about it's okay to play a note wrong, but it's not okay to play without passion. So you're going to make mistakes, and that's just part of life. And yeah, you spilled the milk, just clean it up, dude. You know, it's not about not making mistakes. Like, what are you going to do about it? You know, and how are you going to learn? Okay, now I know I cannot grab the jug like this or whatever, you know?
Yes. So now you are an entrepreneur, and you're an accomplished public speaker and a consultant in companies. And I know you are working on some new projects. Do you want to tell us a bit about those projects?
Yes, and actually I'm running a little bit behind on it because I am having to, you know, do a lot of work to get the bills paid with this COVID stuff, because work just kind of ceased. The economy froze for a moment. But the idea that I'm trying to, that is trying to be born out of me more rather than me making it, it's self-actualization and human development university online. And I've been doing leadership development consulting for over a decade, and you know, it's a small consulting firm, but it's like a rock star kind of thing. Like it was only the three of us, and anytime that we showed up for a day, it was like $13,000 just for us to show up and teach one class one day.
Wow!
And that's a really 90s model, you know, and what I kept seeing and telling them is like, we need to do something online, dudes. And I'm a minority partner, so, you know, that it was like, yeah, we've tried it, didn't work. But one of the partners passed away, sadly. The other one said, you know, I'm 65, I'm going to retire. So he grandfathered me all the content, because, I mean, I've only been there for a decade, but they've been doing it for longer than I've been alive. So I have all this content, and I'm trying to do kind of like Prometheus and bring fire to humans, you know, like I want to bring all of these skills that we would teach to Forbes 100 companies or to a bunch of C-level leaders. And like, you know, it's the reason why a lot of these guys are happy and successful and all of that. I want to bring it to everybody that can afford, you know, an online class. And I'm not gonna, you know, I'm trying to make it as affordable as possible. So, I found that 75% of the coaching calls that we would have, all these leaders were bringing up house problems. And they would be like, I am so ashamed that I'm having to use company money to talk about this. And we're like, no, dude, like you're the same. You cannot like peel yourself, half of you, and go to work or go to the house. Like you're a whole person wherever you are. So we're including, like, we're helping people realize that they're the same person, you know, and how if you're having issues at home, you're not going to perform well at work, and vice versa. So we teach skills that can be used at home or at the business or soccer or wherever you go, that you have other human interactions. So it's and funny enough, about 3 weeks ago, I saw that there is something similar being sold on Sounds True, being taught by the CEO of Patagonia and some of, I don't know, like 5 other fancy CEOs. I'm like, heck, I mean, it was a form of validation. They call it the inner MBA.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay, because at first I'm like, yeah, I think I'm a little bit of ahead of my time with this for like just the regular public. But then after seeing that, I was like, I think we're ready. The world's ready.
Yeah.
So aside from doing this just online, eventually the idea is to also create weekend retreats to where people can, like, adults learn by doing. So you can only grasp, I don't know, 50% or so when, like, you just hear something.
Yes.
So if we create the weekend retreats, people can be hands-on learning, and so we will have both. I mean, there's like, I personally, I'm a lecture kind of person. Like, I can listen to lectures and retain. So there's, we're catering to those people, and I would like to cater to people that do visuals. We have videos, or people that need the hands-on too. So it's pretty exciting, actually.
Yes. So none of these projects are released at the moment. Do you have working titles for them so people can search if they listen to this in the future?
Absolutely. At this point, my website has been redone finally. That I have been working on that one. It needed a lot of redoing because I changed all my activism. I didn't get rid of the content, but I swapped it. So emancipatedhuman.com is my consulting firm. And there I have all the titles and everything that people can look for. I will have coaching, mindfulness trainings, leadership development seminars, anything and everything, along with the online university that we were just talking about.
Yep. So people can get your services there at the moment then.
Yes. At this point, I don't have the online stuff yet. I am actually, so as I was telling you, redoing the website, that's done as of today. And I had already started doing the script for the first class. So I'm halfway through the script of the first class. So I'm thinking that in a couple of weeks, I will have that one released. I have people that have pre-purchased the program, so I owe that to a lot of people. And I'm working on that as we speak. Well, not literally as we speak, but you know what I mean. So it's pretty exciting because, this content has actually changed my life. And I'm just really excited to pass it on to people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so people will know what all the Fortune 500 companies, how they think and everything like that, and how to apply it in their own lives. That's cool. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Luis.
Thank you for the opportunity. I always enjoy talking with you. You're such an amazing teacher as well, and your energy and your presence is really appreciated. So thank you, sir.
A beautiful thought.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for leaving your victim mentality behind, for taking responsibility for your life and asking, how is this wonderful? How could it be even more wonderful? Just a couple of notes about that interview. It kind of blows my mind a bit hearing Luis talk about when his father had his heart attack or that drastic injury that led to his death. Taking responsibility in that situation when you're 17 years old. I can't imagine having done something like that when I was 17. I probably would have froze just like everybody else around him. And it's so interesting how he had the character to do that. And similarly, when he said to his mother, I cannot take your money. He wanted to take responsibility, and that kind of integrity is rare even among adults. So it's interesting to hear somebody do that at such a young age, to take responsibility like that. I should mention too, I think I misspoke a bit during that interview when I said about not the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of something greater. It's probably misrepresenting what my monk friend said. Hopefully I can get my monk friend on a later interview so he can explain some ideas, tell us some lessons from Buddhism, instruction in meditation, and some other things. But I think it would probably be more faithful to say something like, instead of saying the pursuit of something greater, perhaps the fulfillment of something greater, or just right action. So it's not like you're doing the right thing to relieve discomfort, but as an expression of your joy or of your peace. I think that's closer to what my monk friend said, but hopefully clear that up in the future. Thank you so much for listening. Again, check out emancipatedhuman.com for Luis's consultancy services and to check out his courses when he releases them. Check out beautifulpodcast.com. If you need help with some problems in your life, want to increase your self-love, perhaps I can help you out with that. Go to beautifulpodcast.com. You see at the top where it says CBT sessions. You can get a CBT session, cognitive behavioral technique session with me for $6. It's a pretty good price, I think. Some of these guys are charged like $100 or $150 an hour for these type of services, but for a limited time, you can get it cheaply from me. So check that out. Thanks so much for listening and have a wonderful day.